will now take the sediment for this meeting of the Planning Local Review Body held on the 24th of April 2023. Following members are present: Councillors Alec Allison, Jerry Convery, Mary Donnelly, Gladys Ferguson-Miller, Mark Horsham. With apologies from Councillor Leslie MacDonald. Councillor Richard Nelson is present. With apologies from Councillors Norman Ray and Dr Ali Salamati, and Councillor Graham Scott is present. Thank you, and I will now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll just go straight into the business for today. Item 1, any declarations of interest? Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Happy to move that is a correct record.
Second it.
Otherwise agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is a review of case in respect of planning application P220915. The item before us today is a notice of review from the Architectural Cultural Services on behalf of Martin Carroll. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review an application for planning permission in principle for the formation of a house plot at the 103 to 104 Crosswood Terrace in Tarbrax. The review has been requested due to the failure to give a decision on the planning application and therefore is deemed a refusal. The planning advisor will first describe the background to this request for review to our members, and I'll ask James. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, unlike the majority of reviews that are put before you, this review is for the failure to give a decision on the application, and therefore there is no report of handling and decision from the planning officer. Whilst there is no report of handling for the application, the planning officer has provided a statement of observation that has been included in Appendix 5 of the agenda papers. In terms of the application, it is for planning permission in principle for a single residential housing plot on garden ground on the east side of Crosswood Terrace in Tarbrax. The application site is located within the settlement boundary of Tarbrax as designated within the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The site is 0.16 hectares in area and is a portion of an existing garden that serves 103 and 104 Crosswood Terrace. The application site portion of the garden is open grassland with some trees and a disused timber shed. The remaining portion of the garden out with the application site comprises a garage with a driveway with vehicular access onto Crosswood Terrace. The planning application proposes a new vehicular access to serve the application site onto Crosswood Terrace adjacent to the existing one. As the application is for planning permission in principle, the assessment is of the principle of the development only. Matters relating to design are therefore not part of the required assessment process. In terms of planning history, in 2006, outline planning permission was granted for the formation of a house plot, and in 2008, detailed planning permission was granted for the erection of a single-storey dwelling house. In both these cases, the application boundary was for the full garden ground rather than just the current application site, and both utilised the existing access onto Crosswood Terrace. Both permissions have lapsed 10 or more years ago. In terms of consultations, there were 2 requested, with 1 having currently responded. Roads Development Management Team responded stating that the visibility displays required for the proposed access were not achievable due to a neighbouring fence, and stated that it would be preferable if the access location was moved and the existing adjacent access was used instead of the proposed one. They requested that the application was deferred until the access was relocated as requested. To date, there have been no proposals submitted relocating the access. The roads response also set out the parking that would be required depending on what size of house was proposed, noting that there was sufficient space within the site to provide the maximum needed. To date, Environmental Services have not yet responded to their consultation request. As noted in the agenda papers, the planning application received 1 letter of objection, but without clarifying on what grounds they wish to object on. Since its adoption in February, National Planning Framework 4, or NPF 4 for short, now forms part of the development plan, alongside the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. Section 24(3) of the 1997 Planning Act confirms that if there's an inconsistency between NPF4 policies and a local development plan which was adopted before the 13th February 2023, then the policies in NPF4 will prevail. The current South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan was adopted in 2021, and therefore NPF4 would prevail should there be inconsistencies between policies. In assessing this local review, the local review body are respectfully requested to consider the following relevant policies of NPF4 and the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, which are NPF4 Policy 16, Quality Homes. The intent of this policy is to encourage, promote and facilitate the delivery of more high quality, affordable and sustainable homes in the right locations, providing choice across tenures that meet the diverse housing needs of people and communities across Scotland. And then South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 Policy DM3, Subdivision of Garden Ground. This policy states that development of a new house or houses within the curtilage of an existing house will only be considered where it can be demonstrated that the proposal complies with the following criteria. 1. The proposed house is of a scale, massing, design and material sympathetic to the character and pattern of development in the area and does not result in a development that appears cramped, visually obtrusive, or is of an appearance which is out of keeping with the established character or is harmful to the amenity of the area. 2. The proposed house plot and that remaining to the existing house are comparable with those nearby in terms of size, shape and amenity and accords with the established pattern of development in the surrounding area. 3. The proposed house should have a proper road frontage of comparable size and form to surrounding curtilages unless the proposal reflects the development pattern of the area. 4. The proposed vehicular access is of an adequate standard and will not have adverse implications for traffic safety or adversely affect the amenity of adjacent properties by virtue of noise or loss of privacy. 5. The garden space allocated to the proposed house and that remaining for the existing house should be sufficient for the recreational and amenity needs of the occupants. 6. The proposed development will not cause an unacceptable reduction in privacy to existing houses and will itself enjoy a level of privacy comparable with surrounding dwellings. 7. The proposed development will not overshadow adjacent properties to a degree which results in a significant loss of amenity for residents or significantly adversely affected by overshadowing. 8. All existing features such as trees, hedges, walls, fences and buildings that contribute to the character of the area should be retained and should not be adversely affected by the development. 9. Adequate parking for both the proposed and existing house must be provided within the site and must not be harmful to the established character and amenity of the area. And finally, criterion 10. The proposal must not jeopardise or be prejudicial to any future development proposals in the vicinity. And finally, Chair, the review body should note that the applicant considers that the local review body have all relevant information before them to allow them to come to a decision without the need for any further procedure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. As members will now be aware, from the 13th of February this year, NPF4 was adopted and published by the Scottish Ministers, and it now forms part of the Statutory Development Plan along with the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. As the review has been requested because of the failure to give a notice to give a decision of the application, no report of handling is available for the application. Comments from the planning officer have been sought in advance of the meeting, as set out in Appendix 5 of the papers. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has stated that they are content that the review can be determined without any further procedures, and taking into account of what is in their papers, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a site visit. I think all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs detailed in the pack of the site, does provide us with all we have to consider this review without either a site visit or hearing or further written submissions. Can I ask for any comments? Do members therefore agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information?
Agreed.
Agreed. Everybody agree? We can then proceed to the review, and I'll open up for any discussion and questions. Okay, no questions or comments. I will summarise the points already made. The application is for planning permission in principle for the formation of a house plot 103 to 104 Crosswood Terrace in Tarbrax. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the settlement boundary of Tarbrax. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the proposed dwelling house at this location, and it would not accord with Policy 16 of NPF 4 and Policy DM3 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the location of the proposed dwelling house, we could grant planning permission in principle subject to conditions. Our options here today are approve or refuse the application. I will invite for any decisions and reasons behind so. Are members then minded to, Councillor Alec Allison?
Excuse me. I was just going to move grant. I think it's a well-covered site. The trees round about it ensure that there is no overlooking or amenity reduction, and it's coming on to a quiet terrace road. So I would move grant.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Allison to grant planning permission? No seconder. In that case, are members minded to refuse planning permission or approve planning permission without appropriate conditions? Only Councillor Allison moved for grant, but there is no seconder. Therefore, as there was no seconder for Councillor Alec Allison's proposal, it is the decision of the PLRB to refuse planning permission. We need to, we'll refuse planning permission. Everybody agreed? Agreed?
Can I just clarify the reasons for refusal?
Okay, therefore, the proposed development will be contrary to Policy 16 of NPF 4 and DM3 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. I have no items of urgent business, and thank you all for attending this morning, and I'll ask Stuart to stop the recording. Thank you.